Here's the circuit for all parts of assignment 4. We have the ESP32 board with a 220 ohm resistor connected to pin 38, and the other side of that resistor connected to the positive side of an LED, and the other side of the LED connected to ground. For the code for part 1, here at the top, I'm defining that 38 pin as the LED pin. I'm introducing a new variable called brightness that controls the brightness of the LED, and I'm setting up a Boolean variable that just stores true-false values. In the setup portion, I'm beginning the serial monitor so that I can communicate with the ESP32 board through my computer, and I'm setting the LED pin as an output. And in the loop, I'm saying here, if there is not a command that's sent through the serial monitor, to wait until there is one, and then continue on with the rest of this loop. If that command that was sent is on, we turn the LED light on at the set brightness, and the default brightness is 255, which is max brightness. If that command that's sent is off, then we turn off the LED. And if it's anything else, we set, which is gonna be a number, we set the brightness to that number. So if I type in 120, it'll change brightness to 120, and the LED would turn on to that brightness. I'm gonna upload the code. And start the serial monitor. And if I type in on, the LED turns on. If I type off, the LED turns off. And if I type in on and say 10, the LED turns on to a set brightness of 10, or 120, or full brightness 255, or 1, or off again, and back on. For part 2, I'm going to be using the same exact circuit as I did in part 1. And for the code, much of the code is the same as in part 1, but at the beginning here, I'm including a Wi-Fi library. Again, we're going to set up pin 38 as the LED pin. We're going to have an integer for brightness with a default value of 255, and we're going to have a Boolean variable that stores true-false values. In addition to that, we're going to have the port for the Wi-Fi. We're going to have the name for the Wi-Fi and the password so that the ESP32 board can actually connect. And here, we're setting up the LED pin as an output and beginning the serial monitor, and the rest of this is actually connecting the ESP32 board to the Wi-Fi. And in the void loop, only if the client, which is going to be processing, is connected to the ESP32 board, then we're going to wait for commands that are sent from the client to the board, and if that command is true, then we're changing the Boolean variable to true, and we're going to turn the LED on at a set brightness. Again, the default is 255. If the command is false, then we're turning off the LED, and if the command sent is a number, then we're going to change the brightness of the LED to that number. And for the processing code, we're going to be using Java. And for the ESP32 board to connect to the processing application, we're going to give the app the IP address of the ESP32 board as well as the port to connect to. Again, we're going to have a default brightness of 255 in the app, and we're going to have a Boolean variable, again, that just stores true false values. Here is processing connecting to the ESP32 board. In this portion, we're going to be setting up the GUI for controlling the ESP32 board. This first portion is a red button that turns green whenever you press it, and in that green state the LED is going to be in the on state. And here is the button to turn the LED light off, and that's going to be blue. Here is a slider for the brightness, where we're mapping each end of the slider to a brightness from 0 to 255. And here we're just saying if the button is pressed on one of those on-off buttons, then we're going to activate that corresponding button. And if the mouse is dragged somewhere on the slider, then we're going to change the brightness to wherever that mouse is on the slider according to the mapping. And whenever a button is pressed or the slider is changed, then we're going to send whatever command is sent inside of the console. So we're going to upload this code. And here you can see that the ESP32 board has connected to the Wi-Fi, and here you can see the IP address and the port that it's connected to. So we can unplug this, and I'm going to plug it into a portable battery. Here is the setup for the ESP32 board connected to the battery. And we're gonna start the GUI from processing. Here are the two buttons in the slider. And the default value for the Boolean variable is true, so the light's gonna start on. And this is the off button. And this is the on button. And while it's on, we can change the brightness. Again, the off button and the on button. For part 3, again, I'm using the same exact circuit setup as I did for the other two parts. But for this circuit, I'm connecting the LED positive pin to pin 0 on the ESP32 board. For the code, I'm going to be using the Blink template that's been modified. And at the beginning here are all the parameters to connect to the client with the template name that I'm using and the authentication token. And here we are connecting the ESP32 board to the Wi-Fi with the Wi-Fi router name and password. And here I'm setting up the serial monitor. And at the end here, I'm mapping the input to the ESP32 board from the Blink client. There's going to be a slider on the Blink client that goes from 0 to 4095, and I'm going to be mapping that to 0 and 255. And I'm going to write that number to pin 0 to control the LED light's brightness. And this is the Blink setup. Here on the left we have the on-off button, and on the right we have the slider that goes from 0 to 4095. And our data streams for the brightness is going to be a virtual pin that corresponds to the Arduino code, the virtual pin 0 seen right here. And for the on-off button, that would also be connected to pin 0, and that is an output. And I'm going to be uploading this code. And I'm gonna be connecting the ESP32 board to my battery yet again, as shown. And opening up Blink, I can turn the LED on using this switch, and off again, on, and control the brightness using the slider.